Welcome.
Welcome to the Everything Podcast. I am your host, Chuck Manatee. And today's episode is what Ben mentioned yesterday with regards to me doing one or two shows in between, where I'm going to be speaking about some of the older movies. And the first one on that list is one of my favorites. It's the first in a three-part trilogy called Back to the Future. It was made in 1985 with an hour 56 runtime. The cast for this is actually Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, Christopher Lloyd as Dr. Emmett Brown, or Doc as he's called in the show, Leah Thompson as Lorraine Baines, Crispin Glover as George McFly, Thomas F. Wilson, he plays Biff Tannen, and that is actually the antagonist of the show. So yeah, he's the, I wouldn't say big bad, but he's the thorn in the side, so to speak. Claudia Wells plays Jennifer Parker, that's Marty's girlfriend. James Tolkien plays Mr. Strickland. And yeah, that's basically the main cast, the one that you'll see most of the time. The others are just on the side, like for example Wendy Jo Sperber plays Linda McFly, that's Marty's sister, and then Mark McClure plays Dave McFly, which is actually his brother. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the thick of it. So here we go. Okay, sorry about that. So basically it opens up with a bunch of clocks, and when I say bunch, you have no idea, it is a lot of clocks that you see. And then after that it pans to the TV to see a news piece that there has been a plutonium theft. That's going to play a part later. So it's great that you get to see gadgets Doc makes, and this sort of sets him up as a genius. So then you know, okay, Doc is obviously very, very clever scientist, that kind of stuff, where you see the gadgets that he's made. One in particular, obviously, to give the food to Einstein, and he doesn't have to touch anything. Marty comes into Doc's house and plays with a humongous makeshift guitar amp. So he basically plugs it in, sets it or cranks it to full, and hits the strings, which throws Marty back into the couch, and you see everything flying because the thing's so massive and powerful, which is hilarious to watch. So Marty gets on the phone with Doc and then realizes he's late for school. He rides a skateboard on the back of cars to get to school faster. So these little tidbits is obviously great character development. So him being able to play guitar, him being able to be good on a skateboard, all makes an impact later in the show. So I really like that they set the characters up early, for that, so it becomes important later because it definitely fits into the narrative. Marty is late for school and runs into Mr. Strickland. So he's set up as obviously the name is suffice for what he is, Mr. Strict, almost sounds like strict. So he's very strict, so Marty gets detention because he's late for school. Marty then plays, after the scene, you see Marty playing with his band at a talent show, and then abruptly gets cut off by his teacher saying it's just too loud. So yeah, after that Marty goes, walks with Jennifer in the box. So these Easter eggs, there's a ton in this movie. So So when you first see him and Jennifer walking in the streets, you actually see a van driving in the background saying "Re-elect Goldie Wilson." So this also comes up later in the series and more than once. So while in the park with his girlfriend Jennifer, a lady comes up to Marty asking for a donation to help save the clock tower. So this is the biggest Easter egg in the first one, in my opinion, or the most important setup for later. So you'll see as we go. So Marty gets home and he sees a car that's been wrecked, and as he gets inside, he sees him and Biff, his father and Biff. So his father is George McFly. So Biff is the antagonist, like I said earlier, and he has actually crashed George's car. George, unfortunately, is a little bit spineless and does not stand up to Biff at all. And Biff actually complains that he messed his beer while crashing his car. What's he going to do about his, pants, whatever the case is? So as he leaves, Marty obviously has a word with his dad and saying that he's not happy with his father, or just not happy with him for not standing up to Biff ever. So Marty's mom is introduced into the scene. Her name is Lorraine McFly, or Lorraine Baines, depends. So she comes in with a cake that they baked for Uncle Joe, or Joey, who was supposed to get out of prison but doesn't. And she, obviously in the scene you see she's got some alcohol that she's drinking, so it seems that she's a little bit of an alcoholic at that point. So yeah, and then also Marty's siblings are introduced into the scene, and Marty has two, which I was speaking about earlier. That's Linda and Dave McFly. So while at dinner as a family, Lorraine reminisces about how she fell in love with George, the father, and when he got hit by a car by a father. So that obviously plays a part, as you'll see when we get into the thick of things. So I'm just telling everyone, or telling you guys about all the different things that obviously are applicable, and the Easter eggs and the setups. So it doesn't look like she, speaking of Lorraine, it doesn't look like she really loves him that much anymore though. You do get that feeling in the scene. So Marty meets Doc at Twin Pines Mall, as Doc asked him previously on the conversation on the phone. So Doc shows Marty the time machine, which is a DeLorean actually. So Doc puts his dog in the time machine and uses a remote to get to 88 miles an hour. So he's using a remote to work the car, and the dog's in the car. So you actually see him set two timers, one obviously that he's holding his hand, and one that's in the car, and they're the same time. So when the dog goes into the future, he's a minute ahead exactly. So anyway, as I was saying, he uses a remote to get to 88 miles an hour. This is the speed it needs to be to work. And the stolen plutonium is what powers the time gizmos in the car, the flux capacitor, and all that sort of stuff. So even though it's still just a normal electric, normal petrol or gas, or wherever you're from, petrol or gas, that runs the engine, but the plutonium is obviously for the gizmos and the flux capacitor. So Doc explains the flux capacitor and the time panel to Marty, and that's obviously to get to a certain year. It's where you're from, where you're going, where you've been, all that sort of stuff. You see that on the screen. So Doc is just about to get into the DeLorean when the Libyans that wanted Doc to build weapons out of the plutonium arrive. They've got like a van thing, and the one guy's on the top, and they're busy shooting at Doc and Marty. So they shoot Doc, and then Marty makes an escape in the time machine, or the DeLorean. So the Libyans chase him in a car chase in the parking lot, and Marty is seeming to not get away with all the little turns, and they keep teasing the fact that he's almost at 88 miles an hour. So he's never on a straight long enough to get to that, but eventually he does, and he tells them, let's see if you suckers can do 90. That's what he says. And then obviously that activates the time machine, and it sends him back to 1955. So Marty crashes the DeLorean in a farm barn, and there's a family that comes out to the barn with him there, but he's got this futuristic outfit on. It looks like one of those outfits that you'd use if you're working with plutonium, that yellow outfit. So he looks like a space alien, and obviously because the car is from the future, they freak out because the kid has a magazine that looks like the DeLorean, like Marty, in the barn, which is hilarious. So they all scream and run away, and then the man who obviously owns the farm comes back with a shotgun and starts shooting at Marty. So Marty then escapes in the DeLorean. So while speeding away, Marty's on the straight road, and he comes across Lion Estate. And the reason why he knows it is that's where he obviously stays, but now it hasn't even been built, so all you see is the 2 pillars of the entrance of this place that's about to be built. So that obviously freaks him out, because where he's staying is not even built yet. So when he goes back to the DeLorean, it doesn't start, so Marty has to push it behind a sign. And then Marty walks to Hill Valley and notices everything around him is the 50s. So the cars, the way people dress, the toys that the kids are playing with, all that sort of stuff, the petrol gas garage, or what would they call it? Yeah. So the place where you fill up your car. Okay. So that all looks completely different. So the clock tower, like I said earlier, the clock tower is obviously a key component to the story, and he actually hears a chime, so it still works. So it was damaged by being struck by lightning, which is why it wasn't working in 1985. So Marty panics and he's trying to find Doc. Marty actually goes inside a diner and sees his dad getting bullied by Biff, which is obviously where this started since school. That's when Biff started bullying George. And this is regarding George doing Biff's homework, so it's something like your typical bully kind of stuff. So in that diner, you actually see Mayor Goldie Wilson. Remember I spoke about that earlier, where the car actually sort of driving past to elect him or re-elect him. So Mayor Goldie Wilson is actually a waiter in the diner at the time. And he says he was busy speaking to the owner and Marty, and he's like, why do you let those guys bully you and all that sort of stuff? He's like, be like me, stand up for yourself. And he actually says, I'm going to be something one day, and then Marty says to him, you're going to be mayor? And he's like, yes, that's what I'll be. So it's quite funny because he didn't even realize that he's going to be a mayor one day, but that obviously put the idea in his head. Not the first, it's obviously the first time, but yes. Anyway, so George leaves and Marty chases him, and while in the road, Marty sees him in a tree busy being a peeping Tom, and then he obviously goes to speak to him, and as he goes into the road, a car hits him, and this car is the car that was supposed to hit his father, George. And if you can remember, this is what Lorraine was explaining in the beginning, so that's how she fell in love with George. So this is the way his parents were supposed to have met. So after this, he wakes up, he was unconscious, and then he wakes up in his mom's room, and she calls him Calvin. He was wondering, why are you calling me Calvin? And she said, yeah, because I saw it on your underwear. So obviously he's wearing Calvin Klein underwear, so she thought that was his name. So at this point, it seems like his mom's flirting with him, and obviously she had no idea that it's her son that she's flirting with, which is hilarious. He eats dinner with his mom and his grandparents and so on, and then in a crib just next to it, he actually goes up to this baby, and he realizes it's Uncle Joey as a baby, and he's in the crib with bars. So Marty's comment, which was actually quite funny, he says that you should get used to those bars, and that's because Uncle Joey lands up in prison. So that's the same cake that was baked by his mom in the beginning, thinking that Uncle Joey would get out of prison, but he didn't. So after this, Marty freaks out about his mom's flirting and leaves and continues looking for Doc. He then arrives at Doc's house. Doc opens up with this weird science experiment on his head, and this is a place, so he pulls Marty into the house and says, okay, I'm going to read your mind, and this thing doesn't work. So it's an invention that he's obviously an inventor and a scientist and so on, and none of this stuff really works except obviously his time machine. But Marty informs Doc that he's from the future and needs help to get back to 1985. Doc ignores him a little, and Marty tries to convince him by showing him photos and his driver's license. Look, I'm not even born yet, all that sort of stuff. So Doc is trying to leave, and he goes to a different building, closes the door in Marty's face. Marty then tells Doc he got a bump on his head when falling off the toilet, and that's when he drew or came up with the idea of the flux capacitor. So that obviously freaked Doc out. So he opens up, he's like, wow, how do you know that kind of thing? So Doc obviously now decides to help Marty get back to 1985. So Marty shows Doc the video, obviously the one where he was videoing Doc in the beginning with the whole time machine experiments in the beginning, just before Doc got shot. And then that obviously gives an explanation how the time machine works. So Doc freaks out because Doc from the future says they need 1.21 gigawatts to make the flux capacitor work, or to get it working. So he tells Marty, sorry, you're stuck in 1955, because the only thing that can generate 1.21 gigawatts of electricity is lightning. And the problem is you don't know where or when it's going to strike. So Marty says, whoa, hold on a second, I actually do. And remember I told you the clock tower is a very important piece in this, is because the clock tower got struck by lightning, and the lady that was asking for a donation gave him a flyer in the beginning, and that obviously says when and how the clock tower got struck by lightning. So they're obviously going to try and harness that to get the car sorted. So Marty says, okay, well, while you're busy, I can just explore 1955. And he said no. Doc tells him no, because just in case he runs into someone or does something that's going to change the future or whatever the case is, so he can't do that. And then he said, have you interacted with anyone today or whatever? And then Marty realizes, hold on a second, he interacted with his dad and his mom. So the problem therein lies that it could change the future, of course. So what happens after that is Doc asked him, can you please show me that photo that you showed me? Remember I was telling you that he was showing him the driver's license photos and all that. And in the photo it's Marty with his brother and sister, but he's starting to disappear from the photo. And that's where I'm going to end this one, on a cliffhanger. Haha, terrible me. But I hope you guys enjoyed what I'm going to call part 1 of this in-depth and sort of Easter egg and as much info about Back to the Future as possible. I hope you enjoyed it, and as usual you can comment below any reviews that you'd like to see in the future or anything. Ben likes to say that you can do movies, books, comics, it doesn't matter. It's the Everything Podcast. So if there's something you'd like Ben to talk about, please do put that in the comment section below. Other than that, hope you enjoyed the show. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.